Lionel Richie co-founded a funk band when he was just 19 years old. He built it from the ground up, rode it all the way to superstar status, and then, right at the absolute height of their fame, he walked away. He left the Commodores to go solo. It was a massive gamble, but it ultimately turned him into one of the best-selling artists in music history.
We all know the voice, right? We all know the hits. But when you look at the sheer scale of his success, you really have to ask yourself, was it purely raw talent and luck? Or is there a mathematical pattern? Is there a hidden architecture behind the way he built this legendary career? What numerical blueprint explains a bet like that?
Okay, let's dive into this explainer. First, who is Lionel Richie? 2, unlocking the core number. 3, the core character combo. 4, the life graph energy journey. And finally, 5, blueprint of a legacy.
Part 1. Who is Lionel Richie? Let's talk about the man before we get to the math.
Born in 1949 and raised right on the campus of the Tuskegee Institute, his milestones are just legendary. He co-founded the Commodores back in '68, graduated from Tuskegee in '74, and just kept rising. By 1981, his duet Endless Love became a historic bestseller. He goes solo in '82, co-writes We Are the World in '85, and then eventually mounts this massive 2012 comeback with his album Tuskegee, and that completely paved the way for Kennedy Center Honors, a Gershwin Prize, and his 2022 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Let's just pause on this number for a second. Over 125 million. That is how many albums Lionel Richie has sold worldwide. It's honestly an almost incomprehensible level of reach and cultural impact.
But, as you'll see, his journey wasn't just a straight line to the top. Sure, he's an Oscar and 6-time Grammy winner, and he shares a crazy distinction with Irving Berlin as the only 2 songwriters in history to have #1 records for 9 consecutive years. But look at that third point. Between 1986 and 1996, Richie took a massive, decade-long hiatus from recording. That gap is totally fascinating. Let's see what the numbers actually say about a guy who can conquer the world, walk away for 10 straight years, and then conquer it all over again.
Part 2. Unlocking the core number. Let's look at his Doms Nums blueprint. According to his chart, Lionel Richie is a life path number 4. The archetype for this specific number is the builder. His dossier defines his purpose here as learning the advantage of order, system, and service. Basically, he is here to build solid foundations through discipline and hard work.
Notice how the analysis explicitly states that his greatest strength is reliability and a strong work ethic. The builder isn't impulsive. They construct things meant to last. This methodical approach is the exact engine you need to craft enduring, generation-spanning hits like All Night Long and Hello.
When we connect these builder traits directly to his real-life choices, things start to get incredibly clear. Leaving the Commodores in 1982, that wasn't a reckless ego trip. It was a highly calculated risk built on a very solid foundation. His meticulous shifts across genres, from funk with the Commodores to pop soul and eventually country, show a systems thinker at work. And honestly, most importantly, that 10-year break. A builder knows you literally cannot force a structure if the materials aren't right. His discipline is exactly what allowed him to patiently sit out a decade, rather than just release bad music.
Part 3. The core character combo. Time to look at some hidden struggles. Digging deeper into the expert analysis, his core character is the lives in the future combo. Notice the intense duality it presents. This combo brings extraordinary focus. When he locks onto a goal, he pursues it with extreme precision. But it also brings a really heavy burden of worry and overthinking.
I want to read this exact quote directly from his dossier regarding this combo. Have a lot of obstacles in life? Think too much. Always worry too much. Now I want you to try and reconcile that internal reality with the external image we all have of Lionel Richie. You know, the incredibly smooth, easygoing superstar with the $1 million smile we see on American Idol. Well, the blueprint tells us that right behind that smile is a mind constantly navigating self-imposed limitations and future anxieties. So the crucial point here is how this manifested in reality. That decade of silence from 1986 to 1996 was not just a vacation. His dossier warns that -4 energy can feel tied down, totally overwhelmed by limitations, and even become dissatisfied with their path. But his massive comeback with country covers in 2012, that was him actively overcoming the limitations predicted in this combo. It proves that accepting the limitation is actually the very first step in overcoming it.
Part 4. The Life Graph Energy Journey. Let's map out his timeline.
This chart tracks his soul's energy peaks and valleys throughout his entire lifetime. Notice how the graph opens with this consistent, climbing energy from his birth in 1949. By age 19, in 1968, when he co-founded the Commodores, he was already well on his way up this steep initial incline.
Look right here at age 29, the year 1978. He hits peak energy 9, maximum momentum. This aligns perfectly with his absolute peak creative output and stratospheric success with the Commodores, right before he wrote Lady for Kenny Rogers in 1980 and catapulted into his solo era.
Now, what's really wild is what happens next. Look at this immediate sheer drop. We go from a peak 9 at age 29 down to the absolute floor, energy 0, at age 30 in 1979. The dossier calls this total stillness and the place where the soul rebuilds from 0. This drastic internal recalibration happened right before he made the monumental decision to leave the band and go solo. That energy reset was a prerequisite for his solo empire.
If we follow the line as it climbs back out of that 0 state, we clearly see his massive solo run. The pointer lands on his mid-30s. That matches exactly with the release of his album Can't Slow Down at age 34, which sold over 20 million copies, and his Oscar win for Say You Say Me right at age 37.
Let's look at this table because the synthesis here is undeniable. From age 37 to 47, which is the years 1986 to 1996, the graph shows a significant dip. And what happened in the real world? His decade-long hiatus. It matches perfectly. And when does the energy start climbing aggressively again? In his early 60s, which aligns flawlessly with his massive comeback at age 63.
The reading specifically notes that Richie is an early bloomer, meaning his first massive peak hit early at 29. But the graph proves that this peak energy of 9 actually repeats throughout your life. It returned at age 49, and then again at age 69 in 2018. And what happened in 2018? He joined American Idol as a judge, launching an entirely new era of television stardom and sustained legacy that carried right into his Hall of Fame induction.
Part 5. Blueprint of a Legacy. Let's bring all these numbers together.
So the crucial takeaway here is this. Lionel Richie's success isn't just about raw talent. It's a blueprint. It's the perfect execution of that builder trait, overcoming the obstacles of his specific combo and perfectly timing a life graph arc that turned an entire decade of silence into an unforgettable legacy comeback.
Numbers do not lie. They map the valleys of our silence and the peaks of our greatest hits. Every single entity has a pattern. The only question left is, what is yours?